Good morning. Happy Friday. I am flying out to Montana tomorrow. I spend about 5 days out there and I'm looking forward to it. Just vacation, fun and adventure. In other news, Earl has once again continued his preliminary motions hearing. Motions in limine. I don't know what they call it in Texas. But he basically continued the pretrial hearing where they discuss what evidence they're going to allow in and things like that. So that is now set for October 2nd, I believe. So good job, Earl. It's been almost a full year. He was arraigned on October 19th, and now it's going to be October 2nd before he is actually, he's not even in trial. He's not even going to be in trial yet. Trial will be sometime after the motions in limine. So that's number one. Speaking of Earl, one of the big reasons that I was completely unconcerned about Earl's copyright strike against me and his threats to actually sue me for copyright infringement are based on what Sargon of Akkad was going through with Aquila. Obviously, Sargon of Akkad used about a minute of Aquila's footage from a much longer piece to criticize and critique her and her work and her beliefs. And because of that, the court found that it was fair use and that subsequently she had to pay his attorney's fees because it was blatantly fair use. And so me using a short piece of Earl's work, recording himself at a police interview where he stupidly went and talked to the cops without an attorney present, was obviously fair use. So I was not concerned about that at all, which is why I didn't act like I was concerned about it. And I guess finally, I'm sorry that I'm totally unprepared for this as I was going out the door. Nasty Nathaniel requested that I do a rambling while ambling this morning, so I haven't really prepared anything. It seems extra rambly. But let's talk about painting on the street, because as we all know, various metropolises, various cities have allowed BLM to be painted on the street. And then subsequently have refused or are currently refusing to allow other people to paint their messages on the street. What's up with that? What's the analysis? Well, as everybody is aware, a street is a traditional public forum. However, governments can make reasonable time, place, and, this is the important thing, manner restrictions. You can't paint on the street. And the reason why is pretty obvious. You're going to obscure traffic signs, like when they paint stop on the street or when they paint other things on the street, it might confuse people. You don't want people standing on the street painting on it because that's where cars drive. Putting wet paint down on the street might make if they just allowed people to do it willy-nilly, somebody could throw paint on the street, cars could lose traction, etc. So it is a reasonable, I think most courts are going to find it to be a reasonable restriction to not allow people to paint on the street. And of course, paint is something that is probably somewhat permanent, and it's kind of vandalism. Anyway, so the reasonable restrictions have to be reasonable. That's step one. They have to be content neutral, and they have to be narrowly tailored, and they have to be viewpoint neutral. So that's really where the BLM things are going to come back and bite people in the ass. or bite the cities in the ass, because they allowed BLM to paint their message. They allowed somebody whose viewpoint they agree with to paint their message, which goes back to they're not racist because they're allowing BLM to paint on their streets. It's funny, America is a racist nation, but every single corporation is bending the knee to BLM. all the big cities are bending their knee to BLM. It's basically just the Republicans saying, "No, that seems a little bit racist for me. I don't want to say something that is so exclusionary." The media's in the tank for BLM. Anyway, I'm really rambling. So the problem is that it's the viewpoint neutrality that the cities are going to run afoul of, because they're allowing BLM, they're allowing one person to do it. If they don't allow the people to paint their MAGA or whatever on the street, then that is a viewpoint restriction. They're letting people do it, and the only distinction you could point at is the viewpoint of the message. That's the only distinction that anybody can point at. And so the governments of these cities are going to have to justify the difference in treatment, and they're going to have to do it without resorting to viewpoint, and that's going to be next to impossible to do. So that's where the sticky wicket is going to be. Anyway, sorry for the relatively low tier rambling while ambling, although some of you I'm sure will think they're all low tier, but this was again fairly ad hoc. Just right when I left the door, decided I was going to do one because Nasty Nathaniel requested it. So you have a good day, especially you, Nasty Nathaniel. Thanks for being a fan.